Out of nowhere, Weapons, an original horror mystery from the director of Barbarian, Zach Cregger, is number one at the box office again. I hadn't been able to see it during its first 2 weeks in theaters, and because this film is so much about what it means to the viewer, I thought we would do a special spoiler-filled review this week for on the channel. So if you haven't seen Weapons, or you don't want it spoiled, please come back. For the rest of you, won't somebody please think of the children? It was a genius idea to structure the story the way that it was, with the character names as chapters, but part of the reason it's genius is because the story itself allows it to be told this way. I'm sure somewhere there is someone who has got a torrent of this film, cutting together a more traditional chronological cut and learning the magic is in the combination of the structure and the story. Likewise, a lot of frustrated screenwriters trying to feed their latest into the structure will learn it's not any story, but the right story for the right structure. This movie is a good story told by somebody who knows how to tell it, and watching it gives you the same feeling as when someone is holding court at a party. I'm glad that movies like this, Magnolia, Traffic, only come around so often to allow the approach to be fresh. With all that being said, the only chapter I felt missed the mark was the very first one that focuses on Justine, played by Julia Garner, and just because I feel like it torpedoes her character. I understand that from our opening voiceover, we are thinking that Justine must be involved in all the kids going missing. So leaning into that makes sense from a narrative perspective. But what about her chapter gives her space to redeem herself by the end of the movie? She's a hard-drinking elementary school teacher and homewrecker, which aren't great choices, but leans on her level of responsibility. I think the way she wants to talk to Alex, how she can't explain what she will say, and then stalks him, and then runs into him, and then cases his house, and then starts doing overnight surveillance on his house. Drinking is legal, but stalking a child is not. The only redeeming part is that she's dogged, but there is nothing to like about her character. Paul, who she sleeps with at one point, is in a similar position of making bad choices, but he manages to get redeemable moments. He's in AA and he falls off the wagon. It's what happens with people in recovery. And much like Justine's drinking, it's not illegal. When he catches James and gets stuck by his needle, Paul punches him, which is definitely a crime. But after allowing James to walk, Paul tells the captain, his father-in-law, on top of everything. Josh Brolin plays Archer, the father of one of the children who goes missing, and I feel like his character is the one that really progresses the story and approaches it in the most level way. I think he should have continued his experimentation and charting the direction of the children who ran by ring cameras, since 2 feels like a small sample size to work off of when the idea basically came from a dream. Needless to say, this map was right on the money. I feel bad talking about the faults I see in the characters because I thoroughly enjoyed all the acting performances. I'm singling out the MVP, but I thought Julia Garner does a solid job and Josh Brolin gave his usual high capable standard. Alden Ehrenreich was the third main protagonist and he did a great job as well. Beyond them, Benedict Wong, Austin Abrams, and Carrie Christopher round out the lion's share of the dialogue for this, and all bring something unique to the flavor of the film. I know that Justin Long cameo is probably just because of the relationship from Barbarian, but it did make me wonder if he was going to be involved in some sort of twist, because he seemed too recognizable to be in for a little bit. Like when special guest star is the third person the cops talk to in SVU. The MVP of the movie, for me, was Amy Madigan, who killed it in more ways than one as Aunt Gladys. I like when my evil characters have something inherently weak about them. Just aside from the illness that she was dealing with, she was an old, frail lady who could have been done in by a stiff breeze, yet is able to cause terror in this town. The fluctuation in style for her character was great, and she was really able to lean into both sides of that spectrum. Carrie Christopher plays Alex, the one kid in the class who lives, and I thought he did a great job. He really has the hardest spot in the rotation of chapters, yet he leads his section with a lot of poise. He's really good at acting between lines, and not even just for his age. Across the board, all the kids in this movie were great. Zach Cregger is in a really interesting position right now because he has started his directing career with 2 hits, parlays that into a Resident Evil movie, and seemingly has more say in whatever he does next over a lot of known and respected directors. I really like how everything works so well within the confines of his universe. There were a couple of camera moves that were so thoughtful, it was hard not to feel the attention to detail. Most specifically, there was a thing that happened where the camera trucks right, and right when it seems to be coming to a landing in a spot, it creeps a little bit more at the end. It feels like the camera equivalent of sneaking up to a corner and then slowly peeking around. Also, love the choices that were made in the kid chase at the very end, including that incredible follow shot through the doors and windows. If I can make two small nitpicks. First, right after the opening narration, we have the principal speaking to the parents, and the sound is panned left because the principal is left of Justine, which all makes sense, but there should be still some sort of reflection of the room to the right. It only bugged me because it was the first thing you were experiencing, and honestly, I would have loved a fuller mix of most of that scene since it was the only one that felt less than in terms of the rest of the sound. Second, there's a moment where Justine is in the car and there seems to be a speed ramp effect that feels like somewhere between like a 1.2, 1.5 that just felt confusing. I'm all for experimentation, but those two moments felt intentional yet confusing. I've heard a lot more takes online since seeing the movie, which is great because a heavily talked about movie makes it feel more necessary to get to the theater and join in on the conversation. There'll always be like the flashy blockbusters or the awards fair that enough people see that it joins the zeitgeist, but a movie like this feels like it's been a while, like maybe Midsommar, but that still feels like less than this in terms of like impact. If you're asking me what I think Zach Cregger was trying to accomplish with this movie, it's that he creates something that is a little vague and wrapped in enough definitive imagery that it feels like he is making a specific point, and in so making the audience feel like they need to come to a specific point. And it's just a really well-threaded story and just enough mythicism that almost any opinion is on the table. I think 100 people could say to Zach what they think it's about, and he could hear 100 different answers, and all of them could be right. The thing I walked away with is just the amount of different things or weapons we have to hurt our children, and how we as a society are failing to protect the thing we suppose to love the most. Your kid is missing, possibly dead, is a nightmare scenario for a parent. It's a weapon. Having a teacher who might have a drinking problem, might have a problem getting too close to kids, that's a potential weapon. Cop has a drinking problem. The chief is willing to cover up bad behavior. Those are all potential threats to our kids. I found it funny that the only time we see a gun like we would see in a school shooting is during Archer's dream, mostly because that's the only space that imagery would work. It hangs high above, almost like an alien ship set to destroy the world. The clock on it being the end, very much like the actual clock was the end for the kids. It is the worst nightmare you could have, so it clearly needs to be in the movie and needs to be considered a weapon. The focus on drinking over drugs made me feel like these feelings may have come from alcoholic parents because they are incapable of being the best version of a parent for you. They have a disease that puts drinking over everything. And even though they aren't doing anything illegal, again, going back to that, they are not doing everything they can to care for you the way that you deserve to be cared for and loved. If you think of a weapon as something someone can use to hurt you, maybe kill you, you start to see everything as a weapon. One thing I really appreciate is that I was worried that as a parent, this movie would terrify me in a way I wasn't prepared for, seeing as the premise is 17 kids disappear in the middle of the night. Thank you to the whole team for keeping those thoughts as close to the surface as possible so I could enjoy my movie in peace. You know another notable weapon? The Leaderboard! I really enjoyed this movie and would be happy to see it again and really examine it more. I would say that this is right at the top for best movies I've seen this year, but sadly, I don't think this movie has broad award aspirations, seeing as the Academy is scared of scary movies. When it comes to a rating, I would give Weapons an 8.3 out of 10. Zach Cregger has defied expectations again, and the future looks bright for him going forward. This whole movie feels so well planned, and you can feel the real thought put into what you are watching. Great camera work, great sound outside that first scene. The editing and acting are both great. Great story being held with a structure that fits it so nicely that it feels like it was tailored. It never transcends the genre, but it gets you thinking, and I love that about this movie. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry for the later posts here, but I hope to be on a schedule next week. In the meantime, if you want to pair this movie with a really bad one to even it out, I suggest War of the Worlds. Thank you for watching.